Welcome to The Impossible, where we empower others to face the impossible, inspire them to be impossible, and motivate them to do the impossible. I'm Matt, and we're here with our brother, Austin Douglas. Guys, we got a really special one for you tonight, one that I think is going to evolve into its own series as we walk you through this journey that Austin is now on. Life, as so many have described it, can be defined by the suffering you're able to endure, the adversity you're able to overcome, the tragedy that you can accept in life, and more than that, turn it into triumph. And I think so many of our hardships in life can come from times when we feel lost and we feel like we have nothing to fight, nothing to chase, nothing to pursue. Those times where we are without purpose. That's why we emphasize so heavily the need of creating purpose for your life. True purpose comes with true adversity. Sometimes that adversity can be chosen. Sometimes it can be thrust upon us. Sometimes it is the very last thing we ever wish to endure. Yet, in that adversity, there is always limitless potential. There is always the impossible. And because of the nature of that existence, it becomes our responsibility to accept that adversity, to face that impossible and build the version of ourselves, an impossible version of ourselves, a version of ourselves that never should have, could have, or would have existed otherwise. That person will do the impossible. And it is our duty to give that person to the world to help those who need it most. And that is a perfect description of what our co-founder, Austin, is doing right now in his life. He never chose cancer. He never wanted to fight this fight. Nobody ever wanted it for him. He never chose to fail the initial treatment and move on to a clinical trial. He never chose to come out of that and face a relapse where he had to go on experimental therapy. And he especially never chose for that experimental therapy to ultimately fail, leading him to his third battle with this same disease. There's so many stories out there that reflect his, but there are very few that contain the same approach, the same fortitude, and the same pursuit that his does. So we want to use this time, this opportunity, to be able to show you guys what it can look like from the ground floor to face not just cancer, but any tragedy in life. How you can take the raw and real moments and face them, feel them, live in them, and how you can use that to build strength. There are not always times where it's easy. There's times where you break down. There's times where you want to give up. There's times where you don't want to continue on. That's normal. That's human. That's part of the process of building this impossible version of yourself. But at the end of the day, all it takes is a continual drive toward that individual you are building. And if you show up with that drive every single day, you will overcome any tragedy in life. So Austin is using this time not just to focus on his own battle that he's been confronted with, but he's using it as a first-hand direct account to show everyone exactly what this message can do in your life, how you can use it to face any tragedy, and most importantly, how you can become impossible yourself in the face of something truly impossible. This next series will be a first-hand account of one man's battle, one man's journey through tragedy, and how he finds triumph, not at the end, but in the day-to-day, battling this adversity, facing this impossible. We wanted to share with you guys every single experience along the way, because we've always felt on the show that it's best to keep it honest, to keep it real, to keep it true to what is exactly happening. There's so much media out there today where you're only seeing the best of people's lives. You're only seeing what they want you to see. You're only seeing what they allow you to see. And while we certainly want to highlight those moments for you as well, we feel that it is infinitely more important to capture the moments of true tragedy, of true hardship, of true adversity. The moments where we ourselves face the impossible. Because that's life. And we want to keep that as real and honest for everyone as we possibly can, because we know you will all face this in your lives. We continue to face it in our lives. And we believe that by keeping this discussion, showing this true narrative, we can also show the true strength that can exist within these moments. It helps to build ourselves up in our fight, and we hope that it will help to build all of you up in your own fight, so that we can together, as we say in our mission and vision at the beginning and the end of every episode, have that global culture of strength where we are all growing and constantly pursuing the impossible. So, glad to have you here, brother.
Oh, absolutely. Thrilled to be here and happy to be able to, well, one, make somewhat of an attempt to try to follow that introduction. That was incredible. Happy to be here to be able to share this story with you and everybody. As you hinted towards there, is that this is an opportunity for me to really, really show everyone the nitty-gritty, the somewhat confrontational and battle-ready kind of position that, in this case, cancer is taking against me, against my overall existence. I mean, this is a threat. This is a threat to my experience of this reality. This is a threat towards my life, and in the face of that threat, I've through the impossible, I've been able to find myself ready to stare back at it and not only put up my shield, ready my sword, and run at it, but the intent and the purpose that I have propelling me forward towards it is in itself unrelenting. And that really is a beautiful thing to be able to experience in these moments, is that I have unrelenting, unwavering, and somewhat feels a bit undeserved, but the support that I have from everybody going into this has been more than I could ever ask for or even dream of. And that has sent me into these sort of mental convulsions of, where did this come from? How did I deserve this? How did I become in this position? Not of just, this is now my second relapse, third time battling this, but what did I do to deserve this? The support of the community that we have been able to develop here, and ultimately my response to that in our discussions, and ultimately what we decided, especially with this series, is what can I do to give back in the presence of such warmth, and not comfort, though that certainly is within the intentions of those who of those who say anything and everything to me, and that's perfectly fine. But I'm not seeking comfort in this. I'm seeking basically just to get through this.
Yeah.
I'm going to get through it, and I know that I'm not alone. I know that there's such a tidal wave of what feels like undeserved support, but it is there. It's unrelenting, and it makes me feel so ready to give back in this position and take everybody through what I am actually and genuinely experiencing with this, because we tend, as you said, we tend not to share these darker moments, and what we've decided is to bring those darker moments to light. Not just the dark moments, not just the darker moments, but the darkest moments, every moment, whether it is dark or not. I mean, that's going to be the beauty of this process, is that not everything is going to be, over encompassing and brooding with this negativity and this, this sort of orc cloud of despair. Like it's going to have its moments of absolute beauty and tranquility, and that is what I am absolutely ecstatic to be able to share with everybody.
Absolutely. As we move out of the adaptation series and transition onto this next series, I think it's going to give you guys a perfect real life glimpse into what a journey of this capacity can look like. It doesn't necessarily have to be cancer. It can be so many other things in life, but there are these continual areas of true tragedy in life. And if you haven't faced one yet, you will. And we don't say that to be like negative or demeaning or anything like that. It's just the pure reality of life.
Yep.
Life is tragedy, but it is also triumph. One cannot exist without the other. And tragedy doesn't even necessarily have to be a negative word. Yes, we would never wish it on anyone, but it is a part of life. It is something we will all face. And the very best thing we can do is equip ourselves to deal with it in the best manner possible. And there is never an exact right way to deal with it. But the way you will take it and find the most purpose and gratitude and fulfillment from it is by overcoming it, enduring it, learning from it, building and growing from it, so that when you come out the other side, and not even just when you come out the other side, but when you're living the very day-to-day process of it, you can use that tragedy to build triumph in yourself and in those around you. And in so many ways, that can be defined as the meaning of life. Taking the tragedy you face and building triumph from it and those around you. And that's exactly what Austin's doing right now. And so we're going to give you guys a regular weekly update showing what this is like. The good, the bad, the ugly, the strength, the weakness, the confusion, the clarity, everything that is enveloped in this journey. And today we're going to go back to we're going to give you that, what David Goggins would call that week one, day one mentality. Because we've given you several instances now of what it's like to face this build to the climax, to face this uncertainty. Do I have cancer? Do I not have cancer? To even face the diagnosis of you have cancer. But anybody who's ever battled through this time knows that that is a very specific, unique part of this journey. But it always feels like this calm, haunting, quiet place where you're waiting for the floodgates to open. I always think about it in terms of those movies where they're showing D-Day and the people are riding in the boats, and until they get to a certain point, the boats are kind of rocking, and it's quiet, and they're traveling, and it's dark, and everybody knows that something of maximal intensity is about to unfold, but nobody knows what it's going to be, what it's going to be like, until those shells start hitting the water, until the ramp of that boat goes down, until they're ejected out of their boat, thrown into the ice cold water with no orientation, and have to find shore. Only until they do find shore, and it's more treacherous than the water was. So we're going to go back and show you guys today what it's like in this battle to land on that shore and to find even more hardship than you thought you were in. Austin started chemo 1 week ago. And even though he's been there before, he's been on chemo, he's sat in that chair before, he's endured it countless times before, that day one is always an entirely unique experience. He's going to walk us through what happened that day, what he found in that day, what he learned in that day, what he's experienced since then, and what he's going to use going forward, so that if you guys are in a moment right now where you're facing tragedy, you will be able to relate to his firsthand account of what he's experienced. And our hope and our mission is that we will all be able to come together using this to learn, to grow, to gain strength, to build an impossible version of ourselves in the midst of these battles we're facing. So I'm going to turn it over to Austin to let him explain to you from his perspective what he experienced on this week one, day one, cycle one, day one as it's used in chemo terms, as he landed on that shore, not quite knowing what to expect.
So we get in 0800. I have the preemptive blood work. So go in there, donate a few vials, and this is where, in this particular day, this is the moment to where the wave of reality hits you, is because they ask you if you want to leave the, in this case, IV in. And I say, yes. There have been so many times, of recent at least, that I've had blood work done to where I didn't have to say that. And having to say that again for a third time was rough. And the vein that she ultimately found was not up to par for the types of drugs that I was going to be experiencing in terms of their ability to damage and irritate the vein and unfortunately everything else that's within the body. But she comes out with this vein finder machine and finds the vein, pops it in, takes the blood, sends me up to the second floor. Second floor is where you go in for, this is the hematology floor, at least, other things, but at least the floor that I'll be on. And sitting there in the lobby, and I don't know if I called you or you called me, but got on the phone, and our fearless leader, Matt Hill, is coming down the hallway and met up with me for this first treatment, which was crucial. It was crucial. So we get ready next. Get ready for what's next, which is the meeting with. I was under the assumption that I was with my oncologist, but it was not. It was with a certified nurse practitioner, and she was ready to take all of her questions. Which, because it was Matt and I there were quite a few questions, and it was a really good discussion. Certainly had some things answered. More questions arose from those in terms of some of the details of medications that I'll be taking beyond the chemo, which in my case here, going into a treatment session, I guess you could call it. There are a lot of other medications that you go through beyond the chemo, of course, or whatever therapy that you're actually taking. And in my case, there's a lot of for everybody, there's anti-nausea medication, but especially for me, there has to be a lot. Nausea and stomach irritation is just something that I succumb to with these sessions, and so we brought that up to discussion, and certainly again had some questions answered, but also more questions arose from that. Stuff that you just have to try to figure out. It's most certainly unique to each individual, and so kind of get some of those things hammered out as we're waiting for treatment. And then it was 9:45, 10 a.m. is where we are called into the room for treatment itself. And so for this regimen, we're doing a combination of 4 drugs. The one immunotherapeutic drug is pembrolizumab. It is an immunotherapeutic PD-1 inhibitor. And then we have 3 chemotherapeutic drugs, gemcitabine, vinorelbine, and liposomal doxorubicin. And as soon as we get into the room, another wave of reality kind of hits, and so we're discussing with the nurse what precisely is served up for the day in terms of what medications are actually put in for the orders. and trying to make some adjustments to that and get started with the Pembro. Just use it short there instead of trying to say the full name every time. So with the Pembro, the immunotherapeutic drug, we get started with that, and it's a 30-minute IV induction, I believe. And so we get that started, and that's going smooth. The immunotherapeutic drugs, I would say I've experienced little to no irritation in all-encompassing effects, which has been super nice in the past and as of now. But then we get to the liposomal doxorubicin. And this is where things get a bit haywire, unfortunately. So they start delivering it, and at this case, I've already had anti-nausea medication, as well as I think I already had some Ativan at this point as well. So I was certainly delirious, kind of just ready to sleep, which is kind of what I like to do during the chemotherapeutic sessions, is because it takes so long, and with the machine's noises, I don't want to hear it. I just want to sleep. I reserve these days of 3, 4, 5, 6 hours of sleeping, not hearing, not seeing what's going on. I'm experiencing it, but that's purely just having to sit there and take the drugs. So get ready for the doxorubicin. It starts, and in about 5 minutes, or not 5 minutes, like 30 seconds? How long was that? Because I was kind of, I was trying to fall asleep.
Yeah. Well, you'd also received 50 milligrams of IV Benadryl.
Oh,
which
yes.
Some of you may be able to relate to. Like if you take a standard pill of Benadryl, like a whole pill, it's generally 25 milligrams. So, depending on how sensitive you are, that can really knock you out. He got 50 milligrams IV, so he got a flooded bolus dose all at once, and it can help prevent reactions. It can help a little bit with preventing nausea, but it will definitely knock you out, make you very kind of out of its state, really knock you out. Not something I personally have ever enjoyed at all.
No,
it's a really weird state that it puts you in, but you were definitely kind of in and out of it. And what's wild is she had hooked you up. I don't even think you knew you were hooked up, because I had to read your name and date of birth to her.
Oh, no. Yeah. I don't remember
because
that.
She asked you and you weren't responding. And she's like, do you want me to wake him up? I was like, I don't think he would prefer to be woken up.
I don't.
So
that is correct.
I gave her your name and date of birth. And then she hooked you up. It starts going, and I actually have a video, because the doxorubicin is this like bright red color, and you can see it like pumping into the saline, mixing in with the saline, moving down the IV line. I've got a video of that happening. And again, you were totally out of it. And it wasn't 30 seconds into that infusion going into your vein. And what's wild is we were sitting in this Cleveland Clinic room. This is the first time I've been to this cancer center, first time I've been to this health system. So it's all new to me, but I worked in oncology for 8 years. So I was always like, studying, seeing everything, contemplating a lot of things. And I remember right before this happened, like minutes before this happened, I was looking around the room and I was thinking, if somebody had an infusion reaction in here, nobody would ever know about it. And that just struck me so intensely. I didn't say anything about it because obviously I didn't want to put that in anybody's head, but I remember that striking my brain. And then she comes in, hooks this drug up, and I'm not really thinking anything out of it. I just kind of dismissed that thought. She comes in, hooks the drug up, it starts pumping into your vein, and not 30 seconds later, you go from this like half asleep, like delirious state, and you like jolt up, and I see that look in your eyes. Thank God I had the experience in oncology. I knew exactly what was happening. Because if I had been totally oblivious to what was going on, I would have had no idea what to do.
Yeah.
And I don't know that in the state you were in, you would have been able to be of conscious mind enough to like know what was even happening yourself. He went into an immediate anaphylactic reaction, like a really bad one. We do see this time to time with certain chemo agents. Some of them are worse, some of them are better, and it's something you've had before with one other agent, although I don't think to this degree.
No.
So I hop up and I immediately hit the emergency button that's behind his bed. And, fortunately, the whole place explodes. The nursing team comes in, they pull a crash cart, they're pushing all kinds of medications. There's 10 or 12 people in his room. I pop out of the room because I know there's nothing I can do at that point, and I would just be more in the way than anything. I pop out of the room and I'm trying to talk to you. I don't even know if you heard me, but it was just such an intense, profound moment because it's the very first 30 seconds of the very first chemotherapy agent. You already have a life-threatening event. And I was curious to know, because it's not something we've discussed a lot since that point, but I was curious to know, like, what did you feel? What did you notice? What did you observe from your standpoint as all of this is going on?
Well, immediately, sorry, I had felt, kind of like it feels like a fire starts in your chest and then fires up your throat. And so I was like, okay, this is definitely not something I'm supposed to be feeling. And then that's the, like the elephant on your chest. It's just pressure started building up. First it was the fire, and then it was the pressure. And then you can slowly, like with that fire feeling, you kind of you slowly feel like when you exhale on a breath, you kind of vision like an up and down meter. You breathe in and then breathe out. Well, as it's happening, the depth of which you can breathe starts to become more and more shallow. And so I would say by the time everybody got in, I was down to like 50% like breathing capacity, and it kept shortening from there. And then as soon as they hit me with the Benadryl, I started to feel some relief, but like the pressure and a little bit of the fire was still there, pretty intently.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately what led me to very much questioning the decision to continue on with taking the medication.
Yeah. Because what's so profound about this moment is that I was only able to be there kind of on a whim. We were able to work around some last minute things, and I was able to be there. And for some reason going into this, I felt this like intense need to be there, even though like logically, you've done this before, you've faced this before, you've gone through this cancer center before. Like there were a lot of things that like were not new to you about this necessarily.
Well,
and by all means, like you could have handled this by yourself. You could have faced this by yourself. But I felt this intense need to be there because everything's happened very quickly. So it was like down to a week and days to turn this around and make this happen. And we get it set up to where I can be there. And, everything seems business as usual. And then I have that weird thought hit me in that room that if somebody reacted, nobody would ever know. And then minutes later, you're reacting. You're having an anaphylactic reaction. Your chest is pounding. Your breathing is cut off. And not even just specifically me, but if somebody had not been there with you, you would have sat in that chair in that room for who knows how long, not being able to breathe.
Yeah.
And that just shows the extreme intensity and extreme fragility of every single one of these situations. You know, the battle with chemo can ultimately be so intense because of the damaging effect it has over a long-term period on your body. But we talk about it all the time, how in so many cases it can be the treatment that can be so much more life-threatening than the disease, even though you have to endure the treatment in order to find a cure. This is a moment where in an instant, you know, his life could have ended there. But thankfully to, you know, the fact that we just had somebody else there with you who could sound the alarm, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
And they really did have a great nursing staff that day that, you know, I've seen tons of reactions. I've seen tons of situations where they have to be handled. And I really do think the nursing staff that day did a phenomenal job.
Yeah, there were quite a few of them, and they're pretty quick.
Yeah, and they, you know, pushed the right medications. They stayed calm under the pressure, and they were able to revive you and recover you fairly quickly as far as making that reaction specifically stop. But what's wild about this day is then that was not even the hardest thing you had to face.
No, the hardest thing I had to face was having my oncologist come in and not so bluntly remind me that there is a ultimate goal and a task at hand that still needed to be accomplished, and that I needed to continue to take the medication that I just had an allergic reaction to. And I had 20, 30 minutes to kind of think on that, from making an initial decision, kind of just myself in the room, and then having my oncologist come in and talk it over. Wasn't a whole lot of talking, I suppose. It was more of, this needs to happen. But after suffering that reaction, I had to decide to continue with the medication without really understanding the initial reaction of what they would need to do next because of my reaction. So their reaction was, okay, well, now since this happened, we're going to deliver the same drug at half the rate. So half the rate of delivering it into my body. They'll cut that speed in half. And of course, and I reserve every right to quadruple and quintuple check what they actually mean in that, oh no, we'll just cut the rate in half and that reduces the risk heavily of you having a reaction. Do you really mean that? You know, is that actually protocol, or are you just messing with me? I'm getting hyped right now just thinking about it, because in that moment I certainly made myself known, especially to the nurse that we had that day, and thankfully for her having a level head and trying to deal with me, I suppose. But that was an intense moment, because I had decided there, I was like, I'm not continuing treatment or the chemo. Like I'm not doing it. I'm done. And I reserve the right to have made that decision ever so, no matter how temporary it was, I suppose. But I was adamant that I was not continuing. And again, the oncologist came in. She very sternly, which is ultimately what I needed, very sternly reminded us of what needed to be done. And I had to take in that moment, I wasn't looking within myself. I wasn't looking out through the window, I was looking into, and I actually just wrote about this last night, bit of a kind of a profound eureka moment, is that I looked into this sort of canvas, this imaginary canvas that I have that feels ever so real, more real than anything I can deal with here with my five senses. And that the canvas of what I've imagined my future of being, I had to I had to take a nice long look at what I and we very much intend on accomplishing.
And it was so I could see that battle. I could see that struggle in your eyes. And it was so difficult for me to sit there and watch it because I knew there was nothing I could do in that situation. Like I could talk to you, I could speak to you, but that was an internal battle, an internal struggle you had to fight and wage entirely yourself. And guys, I want to emphasize this for you. Like, what happened to him here? I'm sure everybody's known somebody in their life that has a peanut reaction or a peanut allergy. Like, people can have severe peanut allergies where if they eat a peanut, they can have an anaphylactic reaction. Without an EpiPen, they could die. That's essentially what happened to Austin, triggered by this medication. That's like taking somebody, giving them a whole jar of peanuts, they eat a peanut and have an anaphylactic reaction, have to be given multiple EpiPens, and then they finally, they calm down, they get everything figured out, but they're still like reeling from the immediate threat that just happened to their whole life. And then you look that person in the eye and say, I'm going to need you to eat the rest of that container of peanuts. Who just had a life-threatening reaction.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened to him. And after receiving a minuscule amount of this drug, the oncologist looks him in the eyes and says, you have to get the rest of that.
Plus two chemotherapy
drugs
after that.
Plus two other chemotherapy drugs after that.
That was the first one of three.
Yeah.
That's what blew my mind. And I started bartering with myself. I was like, well, why can't we'll just get rid of the doxorubicin. I'll take the GV. It'll be fine. Everything will be fine. And that still holds a little bit of candlelight in my warehouse. I'll definitely admit that. I still want to discuss that, but yeah, that was a very large jar of peanuts that I had to stare at and go, oh. So I just have to eat them slower. That's what you're telling me. Is that I can't just get this done and over with. I have to now double the time of this rate, double the time of the time that's going to take to deliver this drug.
Which was already your longest infusion.
Which is already an hour, so it's 2 hours. And now starting it an hour and a half after the fact that we tried to start it. And so a 4.5 hour day turned into about an 8 hour day.
It was longer than that. You showed up at 8 a.m. We didn't walk out of there till 6 o'clock.
Oh yeah, well I meant like just the treatment session.
Just the infusions.
Yeah,
itself,
just the infusion. Yeah, that was, which is longer than what I had for the brentuximab vedotin plus ABD, with some doxorubicin in that too. So yeah, this was a pivotal moment, I would say. And having to turn my head back to my oncologist and tell her that we can continue with the medication, we can continue with the infusions, after just having this life-threatening experience, I had to set aside a lot of fear that I had already dealt with. I was so ready. I was so prepared going into that day that having that life-threatening experience just blew out all that foundation. And I felt I did crumble in that moment, but it didn't actually take out my foundation. It shook me, because where I found myself in that moment was falling to my habits, falling to the foundation of what I have built coming into this day. And I was able to look her in the eyes and say, okay, if it has to be done, then we will continue. And that I very much enjoy, like, making eye contact with people when I'm talking to them. I very much enjoy that social interaction, even though I'm an introvert by heart. I absolutely love having those moments, especially the deeper the moment, the more intense the moment, the more I feel it is required. And I have a strong feeling that my eyes were were screaming something completely different in that moment, looking at her, and you and the trees outside, because at least we get a decent view with the room that we have. And yeah, really turn a corner in that moment. So we continue on. So like I said, or we said, I had 2 more infusions to go. Next was the gemcitabine, and then finished off with the vinorelbine. And those go smoothly. Unfortunately, now I will say, was it during the rest of the doxorubicin, or was it into the vinorelbine and gemcitabine that I was having more moments of like flare-ups?
I think it was mostly because what we did is we ended up switching the order up to give your body as much of a break as possible. After the reaction, instead of going straight back to the doxorubicin, we gave the gemcitabine and the vinorelbine in the meantime. And I think it was during that time that you were still having like weird flare-ups of that burning sensation, which we likely believe is resultant due to the just immense amount of chemicals your body dumps into the bloodstream in moments like that. Because basically these are allergic reactions where the body's saying, I want this out, I want this gone, and it goes level 10 to make that happen. Those chemicals can kind of, even though they come from your body, they can float around in the bloodstream for a while and leave some lasting effects for sure.
It made me feel a bit floating as well. Yeah. Floating in limbo or something happier. I don't know. But yeah, so the other 2 drugs go. Take care of the doxorubicin. And we walk out of there. And you head home. I stayed at a friend's house very, very thankful for him to keep to put me up for the evening, because I didn't have any medication for anti-nausea to take home, and everything that was filled out for me was down here. I was 3 hours away from relief, and I did not get that relief at all. I had to experience all of that, all of the kind of consequences and the side effects of not only just the chemo causing causing stomach irritations just in general for me, but everything that had happened that day. All of that was just lingering in my body for 2.5 days before I finally drove down here, and that was difficult in itself. So this was 2.5 days of just me, like, it felt like somebody punched me in the gut straight into the stomach multiple times. That's how it feels. That's what it feels like being on chemo for me. Like, I have a little bit of fatigue, some like the increased blood flow in the mouth. Like, I could definitely feel, like, no matter how much liquids I have, like, my tongue feels swollen, and it just feels like my mouth is ready for mouth sores, which I'm trying to prevent, obviously. But that drive home took me about 4.5 hours to do it was actually about a 2.5 hour drive, especially with how I drive. and it took me about 4.5 hours to get back, because I had to continuously stop, because I just, even on straightaways, it was just so difficult to deal with all of that. And I drive all the time. I enjoy driving. That day was not fun at all, but I had to do it. I got down here Saturday evening, and immediately, I'm so thankful he had all that stuff out, because I got back here. I took a couple of pills, not just one. I took a couple, and I was like, knock me out, just get me to tomorrow. And from there on, it's slowly waning. But here we are, recording the day prior of my day 8 delivery of those 3 chemos.
Yeah.
And
that's what I was going to emphasize, is that was all that. Everything he just experienced was cycle 1, day 1. Just the very first day, the first doses of 4 total treatments, and all of those 4 total treatments are just the introductory part to what's going to be the hardest part, that being the stem cell transplant.
Yeah.
Which we'll be talking to you guys in depth about as it arises and as it comes, and we've got actually some very intense and special things planned for that part of the journey.
Yeah.
Again, in keeping with this idea and this mindset of wanting to keep it as real and honest and transparent for you guys as possible. And this series, Austin came up with this name, and I love this name. It's titled Parts Unknown. Because, as Austin stated earlier, we're working to shed light on some of the darkest, more unknown, more unspoken about pieces and parts and instances of this journey through tragedy and finding triumph within it. So I love that name, and as much as it pains me that we're on the journey we're on, and that you have to fight the things you have to fight, I am immensely inspired by and ultimately empowered by the approach you've chosen to take with this. Because I know you said at the beginning, and it was interesting to hear you say this, you had stated that you don't know what you did to deserve such an immense outpouring from the incredible community of people we have around us. And I definitely can can relate to those feelings. But I think even still, you don't understand even quite just the amount of people who are watching you right now, following you, have true concern and genuine goodwill for you, and who are witnessing this journey you're on with amazement and disbelief of how you've been able to approach it and how you've been able to work through it and how you've been able to create this triumph from the tragedy that's going on. And I think what I would offer, because this is something that's brought me comfort in my own journey, in those times where you ask the question, what did I do to deserve this? I think we can take that and we can change it to, I'm going to make sure I earn this.
Touche.
And when we wake up with that and say, I'm going to look at all of these people that I know have given me so much, done so much for me, I'm going to try to earn that every day. Mm-hmm. With my approach, with my message, with my dedication, and ultimately with your pursuit of the impossible.
Amen to that.
Absolutely, brother. So, dude, I can't tell you how proud I am of you. I can't tell you
Cheers, man.
What it means to have you here sharing this message, despite how hard it is to go back to moments like that and to relive them. But
it would be harder to go back to the person that I was 2.5 years ago.
Absolutely. Because that man could not have looked the oncologist in the eyes and said, we'll continue.
No, I would struggle to even use the word man as an identifier. So,
and look who you've built now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And who you're going to build throughout this process is
so excited.
Something immense, for sure. For sure. So, guys, we appreciate you tuning into this episode. We appreciate you joining us on this journey. And we mostly appreciate everything you've done for us along the way, helping us to spread this message, to share in our mission and our vision to have this ultimate impact on the world. And as always, the number one thing we could ever ask for you is, if this message, if this journey brings you something positive, we ask that you share it with as many people as you know that you think it would help them in their own lives and their own journey, because that is ultimately the best way we could ever spread this message and fulfill this mission and vision that we have for everything we're doing with Impossible Performance. We do also want to take a moment to mention some of the incredible brand partners that we've had along this journey who have jumped on to help sponsor us for not just this podcast, but for the Columbus Marathon race, where we help kids find hope in their journey and help them realize their strength in the face of immense battles. And those brands are King and Fifth, who's been with us nearly since the beginning of everything we've done. Austin and I are wearing both their hats now. We are never not wearing these hats. We never wear anything else. They are the best products we've ever encountered for both training, for running, for speaking, for formal engagements. They have a product for everything. And you guys can check them out at kingandfifth.com. Their link is in the show notes. Use code. It has changed. It used to be Impossible Performance. We actually unfortunately had a leak where that link got leaked onto some not so good sites, and it corrupted the link as well. And so now we've updated it. They were incredible in stepping in, getting everything corrected, getting everything figured out, and it has been updated to Performance 10 is our new discount link with King and Fifth. So if you guys were using that old one, make sure you update that link, and we'll still get you your 10% off at checkout on any of their products. And the new company we've started to work with, which we're so excited to bring you guys. You see them all over the table here because we pound these things. And it's an incredible product. I hate to call it an energy drink because it's not an energy drink. Mm. It is a performance drink. We're not impossible energy, we're impossible performance. Yeah. And while caffeine can be a driving, motivating, energizing source, we have thankfully now to Kenetik found something that's even better, something that drives performance, and as their mission is, gives you momentum for life. It is a patented blend of ketones that are direct fuel to your brain and give a great level of mental clarity and focus, especially in that morning time when you wake up kind of groggy, you want to hit that coffee, you want to hit that energy drink. We've found that Kenetik can provide the same and even better benefits without any need for caffeine. There's no artificial flavors, no artificial ingredients. Everything is natural, 0 sugar, 0 caffeine, and it tastes amazing.
Really, really good.
The number one thing we hear every person we give this to is they're immediately blown away by how good it tastes. Tastes like you're biting into a real whole pineapple, which is just incredible.
Don't recommend, but like, it tastes great.
Yeah, you can get that in the form of a ready-to-drink, performance-enhancing can. So guys, check out Kenetik. Use code IMPOSSIBLE10 at checkout to get 10% off their entire store. Get your cans in and fuel that momentum for your life and everything you're chasing in it. And I think I want to close by having Austin give us a description of one of my favorite pieces of this whole series. You guys have seen the thumbnail on this episode. If you're listening, you can see it on your phone. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see it as you click on the video. But it's a powerful thumbnail, and it's something that's been a core central piece to Austin's journey since the very beginning of all of this, and honestly, even before. And there's, in part of this painting, in part of this thumbnail, there's a painting of train tracks leading to an unknown destination. And I wanted to have Austin explain to you guys a little bit of what this particular piece of this series and this message means to him, because I can promise you guys there's nothing we do by accident. Every little unique quirk or piece of this entire show and our message and everything we do is all incredibly intentional and has deep levels of meaning within it. And I thought there was no more fitting way for him to close this first episode this first day, cycle 1, day 1, than by him giving you the explanation of what this piece means to him and what it's going to mean throughout the entirety of this journey.
Lot's Frau. It's a phenomenal 2 very large pieces of canvas put together. And the incredible nature about it is that the lower half piece has another sheet of canvas on top of it that was literally with a flamethrower burnt and left somewhat in contact, beautifully placed together upon the firm sheet, the good sheet of canvas. Its motivation was from a visual of the railroad tracks leaving Auschwitz. And so, within the description, within the motivation, and within the piece itself, there's a lot of pain. There's a lot of suffering. There's a lot of disdain for what existence means to you within that moment. And it really, really does strip life of all of its color and grandeur. But what I find to be so promising about this piece is that within all that color devoid of all of that searing noise you hear by just looking at it, it hits you like thunder that's nearby, is that those train tracks lead off to somewhere. In my case, I'll make sure that I manufacture that those rail ties lead to somewhere better. I see it as an opportunity to be willing to take this journey on and stay on track towards something absolutely beautiful and internally divine.
Because at Impossible Performance, we are striving to build a global culture of strength, fostering a spirit of growth in constant pursuit of the impossible. Thank you for listening, and as always, be impossible.